The certified letter arrived on a Thursday. I signed for it, brought it inside, and opened it at the kitchen counter. It was from my landlord's attorney. It said I owed $28,000 in back rent, property damage, and legal fees, and that he was filing in court the following week. I had lived in that apartment for 3 years. I had never been late on rent, not once. I had paid every month by certified check on the first, because I'd grown up watching my mother fight landlords over rent disputes, and I'd promised myself I would never give one a reason to come after me. I read the letter twice. Then I went to the closet in my bedroom, pulled down the file box on the top shelf, and started pulling out check stubs. I had every single one. 36 months of certified check receipts, dated, with the bank's stamp on each one. I had emails confirming receipt from his property management company. I had photographs of the apartment from the day I moved in and from a walkthrough I'd done 6 months earlier when he'd mentioned wanting to sell the building. He was claiming I owed him $28,000. I could prove I owed him $0. But proving it and surviving the lawsuit were two different things, and he knew that. I had moved into the apartment after a divorce. It was small on the 3rd floor of a 6-unit building in a neighborhood I could barely afford. The landlord had seemed fine at first. Older man who owned 3 buildings in the area, dealt with tenants directly instead of through a property manager. He'd asked for first, last, and security up front, and I'd paid it in one check because I had it from the sale of the house. For the first 2 years, I barely interacted with him. Rent went out on the first, repairs got handled when I asked, the building was quiet. I thought I'd gotten lucky. The change came when he decided to sell. He'd mentioned it casually one day when I ran into him in the hallway. Said he was tired, his kids were grown, he wanted to retire to Florida. He told me he'd give me 90 days notice if a sale went through, which was more than the law required. A few months later, he stopped me in the hallway again. He said he had a buyer, but they wanted the building delivered with all units vacant. He asked if I would consider leaving early. I told him I couldn't. I had a lease through the end of the year, and moving on short notice would cost me thousands. He nodded and said he understood. The next month, he raised my rent by $400, citing a clause in the lease I hadn't noticed. I paid it. I didn't have a choice in the middle of a lease. But I started keeping copies of everything. Every check, every email, every text message. I started taking pictures of the apartment once a month, time-stamped, to document the condition. I told myself I was being paranoid. 3 months later, the eviction notices started. The first notice claimed I hadn't paid the previous month's rent. I had the certified check receipt. I scanned it and emailed it to him. He didn't respond, but the notice was withdrawn. The second notice came 6 weeks later. Same claim, different month. Same response from me. Same silent withdrawal. The third notice was different. It claimed I had caused $12,000 in damage to the apartment. Water damage in the bathroom, broken kitchen tile, scratches on the hardwood. I hadn't done any of those things. The apartment was in better condition than when I'd moved in. I responded with the photos I'd been taking, time-stamped, dated, monthly, going back 2 years, every room, every surface. The bathroom was fine, the kitchen tile was fine, the hardwood was fine. He didn't respond directly. But 2 weeks later, I got the certified letter from his attorney. The lawsuit was a different kind of pressure. It wasn't about whether he could win. He couldn't, and I think he knew that. It was about whether I could afford to fight long enough to prove it. Lawyers cost money. Court dates take time off work. Even winning a frivolous lawsuit can cost you $15,000 or $20,000 in fees you'll never recover. He was betting I'd settle. He was betting I'd agree to leave the apartment in exchange for him dropping the suit. He'd done the math, and he'd decided that scaring me out was cheaper than waiting for my lease to end. I hired a lawyer. She looked at my documentation, the receipts, the photos, the emails, and told me she'd never seen a tenant this prepared. She asked me how I'd known to do it. I told her my mother had taught me. She told me we weren't going to settle. We were going to countersue. The countersuit was for harassment, retaliation, and abuse of process. My lawyer pulled the records on the previous eviction notices, the ones he'd filed and withdrawn, and used them as a pattern. She subpoenaed his communications with the buyer of the building. She found emails between the two of them where he'd written in plain language that he was trying to clear the units before closing. One of the emails specifically referenced me by apartment number. He'd written that I was the holdout and that he was applying pressure to get me out before the end of my lease. That email ended the case. His attorney called mine within a week of the subpoena results coming back. They wanted to settle. Quietly, out of court, they offered to drop the lawsuit and pay my legal fees. My lawyer said no. She told them we wanted the legal fees, the rent I'd overpaid for the last year of the inflated increase, damages for emotional distress, and a written admission that the lawsuit had been filed in bad faith. They settled for most of it. The written admission was the only thing they wouldn't agree to, but the financial terms came to just under $60,000. My lease was honored through its end date. I moved out on my own timeline 3 months later, when I'd found a new place I actually wanted to live in. The building sale fell through. The buyer pulled out when the lawsuit became part of the public record, and the landlord ended up holding the property for another 2 years before he found someone else willing to buy it. By then, the market had shifted, and he sold for less than the original offer. I don't know if he retired to Florida. I don't really care. What I think about, when I think about it at all, is the file box, the receipts I kept for 3 years because of something my mother told me when I was a kid. She'd said, with a landlord, you keep everything, and you keep it forever. Because the day you need it is the day you won't have time to find it. She was right. I kept everything, and the day I needed it, it was already in the closet, waiting. If this story hit you, subscribe. Every case on this channel starts with trust and ends with the truth.